I want to talk about terminology and how sometimes terms are misused. I just posted a video and it was about the world's worst knife, and in parentheses I wrote Swiss Army knife slash multi-tools. All right, now this was when I'm writing the title, I wanted to clarify what kind of knife, because there's the world's worst fixed blade, the world's worst balisong, etc. Right? So I figured I would clarify that specifically for whoever wants to, whoever sees a little thumbnail, goes to click on the video, they know what I'm talking about. The problem is that people associate Swiss Army knife with Victorinox because Victorinox supplies the Swiss Army with the knives, right? They're, the original people that made the design, and so people, they automatically assume if someone's saying Swiss Army knife, they're talking about Victorinox, and I'm here to say that I don't think that's right. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I strongly feel that Swiss Army knife is a generic term. Sometimes it's misused. All right, I'll give you some examples. This, to me, is a Swiss Army knife. Okay, this is not made by Victorinox. I call it a Swiss Army knife because it has red scales, it has multiple tools, it has the same shape blade. All right, this one says stainless china on it. Okay, you might be able to make that out. But most people would call this a Swiss Army knife. This knife right here looks like a Swiss Army knife, right? Let's open this up, take a look. This says Wenger. Does that mean it's a Swiss Army knife? I don't know. This one, let's see. Oh, I have a bunch of them here. Let me get to the point. What is this? Is this a Swiss Army knife? Doesn't really look like a Swiss Army knife, but it has to be because this is from Victorinox. So I'm sure you guys understand what I'm saying. It's a term. Swiss Army knife to me is a term for a knife that looks like this. Okay. And I've been planning on doing a video talking about terminology too, because people who are outside the knife community, people I've heard call every fixed blade a buck knife. If you have a fixed blade knife, someone say, "Oh yeah, it's cool buck knife." No, Buck is a brand. That is a knife. Buck is a brand, right? Victorinox is a brand. And I use this point in the comments is that you won't go onto a website and buy a Swiss Army knife. It's not titled Swiss Army knife. When you get it in the mail, it doesn't say Swiss Army knife on there. It says Victorinox. You buy a Victorinox Cadet or a Victorinox Classic. You don't buy a Victorinox Swiss Army knife. So it's just a term. Now, I may be wrong in thinking this way, and obviously there's a lot of people who think otherwise. They directly associate Swiss Army knife with Victorinox, which is not necessarily wrong because they are the original makers of it. But I'm sure you guys know what I'm saying. When I titled the video like that, it wasn't purposely being misleading or anything like that. So, that being said, I added the word fake. So I wrote fake Swiss Army knife. So anyway, I want to make this video just clarifying that and also talking about generic terminology. Like I said, some people will say buck knife when it's just a fixed blade. I've heard all kinds of things. I've heard a case knife for pretty much every slip joint. Doesn't matter what brand it is. Some people think that's a case knife. Zippos is a great example of wrongfully used terminology. You know how many people call a Zippo style lighter a Zippo? Doesn't matter if it's Rossinol. Doesn't matter if it's something made in China. If it hinges and looks like what we know a Zippo to be, people call that a Zippo. Doesn't mean it's a Zippo brand. It's a terminology for that. And of course, they're wrongly using that because Zippo is not a style of lighter. It's a brand. What else? Leatherman. That's a fantastic example of misterminology. Pretty much everyone outside of the gear community, okay, people who they're not really into this as a hobby, any of this stuff that we do. And you'll take out a multi-tool, and if they even know the name Leatherman, they'll just call that a Leatherman. What they mean to say is a multi-tool. Leatherman's a brand, not a style of tool. But it's just how the terminology is used, and sometimes it's misused. And perhaps I was wrong in misusing that, but I really don't feel like I was wrong. I thought that I titled the video how I was thinking of it at the time. And I think this happens sometimes with different videos too. is that like when someone's putting a title for a video, they have something in their mind. So I understand that the idea of someone seeing it and reading it as one thing, where they read world's worst knife, Swiss Army knife. That wasn't what it was. Swiss Army knife part was in parentheses to describe what I'm talking about. But people read it at, obviously some people clicked on it like, what are you talking about? They make, Victorinox makes great knives. And they do. They make the best Swiss Army knife. That's why the Swiss Army uses them. But they're not the only makers of Swiss Army knives, if that makes any sense. That is purely my opinion. That is not necessarily fact. But the only information I can give that adds to that, like I said, was that you don't buy Swiss Army knives online. They're never marked like that. They don't actually say Swiss Army knife on it anywhere. So that's my, of course you can argue that fact. And like I said, I may not be right on it, but I figured I'd make a video at least talking about it a little bit. So I wanted to clarify it. I mean, when I make a video and I put a title up there, I want you guys to know what you're clicking on. That's the whole point. I try to be very accurate with the titles, okay? And that one, I guess, was a little misleading. Not purposefully. But anyway, it was a good chance to talk about terminology anyway, because I wanted to touch upon it eventually. Zippo, Leatherman, Buck. Those are three different brands, but those terms are used, and Swiss Army knife, they're used very widely for different things that aren't necessarily, you talk about, call a lighter Zippo, it doesn't mean it's a Zippo brand lighter. These are wrong, obviously, in many cases, but I don't know, it's just how I saw it. You tell me what you think. Now that I've described my perspective on things, do you think that this is a Swiss Army knife? And do you think this is a Swiss Army knife? I think the most accurate way we can describe these is, this is not a Swiss Army knife. This is a Victorinox knife. And this is a Swiss Army knife copy. So I guess that's what we can say. So perhaps I should have used the word copy or fake to begin with. So, anyway, I want to touch upon that. You guys let me know if you have any stories of people calling your gear or tools by the wrong terms. Let me know if you've had experience. Buck knife, I've personally experienced that before. People called any fixed blade a buck knife. I've heard that from people, and I correct them politely. I say, oh yeah, it's a fixed blade. It's not a Buck brand though. And they're like, oh it's a buck knife. It's like it's a brand, but I usually don't go past that because they really don't care anyway. Zippo is probably one of the biggest ones I've ever heard. Pretty much any lighter that hinges open and has a striking wheel and a flint and all that stuff is a Zippo lighter. And I mentioned this before. If you don't know, Zippos, that style of lighter existed many years before that. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Dunhill was the company that created that style lighter, a flint wheel with a wick and everything else. And George Blaisdell in 1932, all he really did was put a hinge on it so you can use it with one hand, that style lighter. But anyway, that's for another video. And then of course Leatherman is very widely used. It's just any multi-tool, people just call them Leathermans. For some reason they'll hear that name and they associate Leatherman with multi-tool. What's interesting too is that Victorinox knives, which this one is not, a lot of people call these multi-tools, and I never ever call these multi-tools. I call these Swiss Army knives. These to me are Swiss Army knives. Okay, when I think of a multi-tool, even though these are multi-tools by definition, I think a Leatherman style tool. Something that's mainly pliers, not mainly a knife with other things added in. So terms are they're interchangeable. Sometimes they're wrongly used. And then, of course, when you have something associated to a term or a brand that's specifically associated to a term, there's misdirection sometimes and confusion. So anyway, Jesus, that sun is bright. You can see me in the sun. Yeah, so let me know what you think down below. That's pretty much it. Just wanted to touch upon that subject a little bit, and it could not have been better timing to do so. So anyway, no hard feelings. Sometimes I had not that it matters, but I had a really rough day today. So I posted the video, and then of course everyone's getting on my case about it. So I'm like, I have to at least make a video talking about it a little bit. So there you go. Hopefully the title is no longer misleading. So fake Swiss Army knife. There you go. Have a great day, guys. I will see you soon. Take care.